And Sandpiper really was, I think, a good company to work for, especially as a first 121 operator. Did you have similar experiences, or did you see things differently?
Oh no, I couldn't agree more. I had a blast. I had a blast flying for them, especially in the beginning when things were. I mean, we were. It was a big regional. We had a lot of bases. Um, Everybody was just great to fly with. You know, there were the occasional bad apples that you just run into. I think at every job or even every airline, but you know, it wasn't too bad. So everybody got along really well, and we had some fun, you know, fun layovers, fun places that we flew to. Some very not fun places to fly to either in the winter that we did from Chicago, but no, we I had a great time. Only there towards the end, it was just a little bit of not as nice, but yeah,
Yeah, mergers and acquisitions and bankruptcies and
yeah.
things definitely threw a wrench in the machine. But yeah, we both had a pretty good career there. Can you remember some of the highlights from your training? I know it's way different now, and I've talked to pilots that are going through training at Sandpiper and some of the other regionals as well, and completely different atmosphere from what you and I had to endure going through initial training at a regional back in the late 2000s, where it was very, very militant and, look to your left, look to your right. One or both of those individuals or yourself is not going to make it through this course and you're going to get fired. So study. Do you remember it the same way?
I completely do. Yeah, it was it's a little bit of a shocker when I got to my current employer how you know how they're training. Not that it's bad training. It's just how we were trained before. It was just very much like your job was on the line all the time that we went for, even for recurrent. Um, it was like I believe they had the three strike you were out, and they pretty much stuck to that game plan. You know, they made you come in prepared and study, and they were some definitely difficult instructors that would make your time there a little bit more not so enjoyable.
Yeah. Yeah, that
But you
was
know
the
that's
common thing with even just the line pilots that I would be flying with there. They're like, study up. You got training coming up next month. 3 months ahead, you should, study the blue book. And then 2 months ahead, study the red book. And then 1 month prior, go through all your profiles and limitations and have those like memorized. Know every single thing on your EPC, the emergency procedures checklist. Know all of it, not just the memorized stuff, because you want to go in there over prepared and underwhelmed. And because that's where you get fired. You're not going to get fired on the line unless you do something stupid, bang up an airplane, or mess with the women that work there. Because if you don't do those things, you're never going to get fired. You're going to have a long career. But at Sandpiper at the time, the attitude was the training department's where you're going to get your strikes, and the training department is where they weed out the people they don't like. And I always thought that was a pretty awful thing and kind of biased way of looking at things. I've never really had a major problem. I've had a few trouble instructors that were very tough, made me a better pilot, I think. But yeah, like you said, it was a very kind of a militant place, the training department. It was very tough. And I see the way that the new hires go through now, and it's very much more gentle. Oh, you don't need to know that. Don't worry about that. You don't need to know that. You don't need to know about that. And then when you get on the line, I do see a difference. I see a little bit of a difference in terms of the knowledge base. And Rob, you and I both spent time as a check airman there at Sandpiper. Do you think that that's true to say that now is a different time in aviation, and the training is a lot more online, electronic, self-paced, and less about knowing how many rivets are in the wingtip of the right
Yeah.
wing?
Yeah, it certainly has evolved from our initial, experience in a 121 airline training department, where the theory of here comes the bolt down the assembly line, and they're going to build the airplane around it. You have to explain how they did it, to where now, you just need to know what it takes to get this airplane from the gate at your departure area to the gate at your destination and anywhere in between. So and operate the plane safely and keep everybody comfortable, with all the apps that we talk about, weather apps, turbulence. I mean, they're more concerned about, not hurting anybody else with turbulence and keeping everybody comfortable than they are about, what the percentage is of the air coming out of whatever ninth stage duct going to whatever ACM. What does ACM stand for again? It's like,
Yeah.
come on, dude, it's a pack.
N1 65 to 102.4%. What?
Yeah, then the ignition comes on at 10%, but then if it's, something else comes on at 18%, whatever.
When's the
dude.
fuel flow and when's the EGT
Oh
rise?
my gosh. Come on now. Isn't that
Yeah,
what a FADEX for?
and Juan, you mentioned that so you spent your time in the training department there. You enjoyed it. It was a great company. But once you got to Potato Jet in 2015, and we'll talk about that, how you migrated over there and the decision behind that in a second. But once you got to Potato Jet, you said the training was completely different. It was a little bit of a shock value for you.
Yeah, it definitely was. It seems like you get feedback from previous people that have gone through it, and they kind of give you the 411 and what to expect, and they gouge, if you will, and so you kind of know what you're getting into. But once you're in it and you go through it, it was pretty just. There was nobody out there to get you. It wasn't a pressured training. It wasn't. It was more like, hey, look, we want you to know this stuff. If you need more time, we're gonna get you more time to do it, right? And so it was nothing like that. Like, it wasn't. They hire you for a reason. They want to keep you, and they showed. And so I think that was nice, as obviously somebody that's new to the airline, to that particular airline, that you want to not have the pressures that come with the training and learning new airplanes and things like that. So it was a much more relaxed pace than the previous build the airplane from inside out and outside in, and but a little more enjoyable. It made the time better.
Yeah, I think
also
so.
think that I was going to say I also think that the airlines themselves have, evolved quite a bit from the position of, we don't need that many pilots right now, or the pool selection is, to really large, to now it's like, we will hire you if you can fly a kite. We just need you to be able to smile and get past the frontline interview, and we'll teach you everything else along the way.
Yeah, and I think Roger, I wanted to get your 2 cents on this too, because I think, in my experience, a large portion of the thought process behind making the regional or the initial cargo job tough for young pilots versus maybe the major or the mainline carriers is because once you get to a major mainline, you have to meet certain qualifications, and most of the time those qualifications include previous 121 or 135 experience that include jet airplanes, bigger aircraft. And so when you're looking at those times, as Rob and Juan have mentioned, where the very cyclical nature of the business means that times are good, there's not that many pilots in the pool, we'll hire you if you have a pulse, and as long as you're not a jerk, basically. At those times, things are a little bit better, but when there's plenty of pilots in the pool that they haven't hired for a while, they can be a little bit more picky. But the reason I think that those entry-level positions are tougher in the training department is because sometimes those pilots don't have the experience, and they're trying to weed out the people that just don't have the right mindset to be there. They want to be there for the thrill of the job, and it's just a transition, and they look at it as kind of like, well, I just have to do this to get to my next place. So by making it tough, they're like, well, then you're not going to make it through the program.
Yeah, I mean, you guys had a different experience. I flew at ExpressJet. I had a different experience even there comparing a regional to a regional. It was not nearly as militant as you guys have made it out at Sandpiper. And so there's going to be some differences there as well. Overall, I don't think there's really going to be any argument from anybody that the supply and demand is going to push a large portion of what that hiring process and what the training process is going to look like.
Agreed. Yep.
Yes.
Now, that being said, yeah, you're absolutely right. If I'm going to take, when you're at the introductory level of commercial flying, and I'm taking this large pool of candidates that have been flying banners or flight instructings or flying pipeline control or any other host of things where we've all been flying a Cessna 172, a Cessna 172 flying around at 80 or 90 knots and making that jump into a jet. Not everybody is going to make it.
Right.
There is just no denying the fact that all the people that are going to fly 3 times faster than they've ever flown in their life, some people are going to be able to do that and some people are not, especially when you start putting in holds and instrument approaches and on that whole instrument procedures that I talk about from time to time. Then when you get to the regional airline and you've flown at a regional for 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, or however long it is before you make it to the majors, now you're flying at the exact same altitude, at the exact same speed. And in the end, let's face it, whether you're sitting up there in the front of an Embraer 145 or up there in the front of a 777, it all looks the same. And what's back behind you you have no idea how many people are sitting back there if you really think about it.
Yeah.
That psych picture from 37,000 feet in a 777 looks at Mach 8.0. It looks the same as an Embraer 145 at Mach 7.8 at 37,000 feet. And so they don't need to do that weeding process because everybody's already done it. Nothing. Right. I mean, it's just some systems that are different, but not the actual speed and procedures. Not at least not to a very large degree.
And if we could circle back, it all goes back to what Juan was saying on the initial onset of his flight instruction stories with someone who has never experienced a spin and now has to do it in training. Their first exposure to it, how are they going to react? So you really need to be prepared for someone who's never gone through it before, versus if you have 2 flight instructors that have already gone through all the training and they're just kind of going up there to get recurrent or checked out or whatever, you can kind of sit back and just fine tune the details. And I think it's the same when you're talking about employment for an airline. Is when you're starting out, you need to be prepared. A lot of these experiences are new. They do need to be a little bit more stringent because they have to weed out those that maybe are not as strong in their skill set and might need more training, or people that are just kind of in it with the wrong attitude. And I think attitude, we've said this almost every episode since the onset of this podcast, attitude is everything. Because if your instructors, your check airmen, your employers, your chief pilots, if they see that you have a good attitude and you just made a mistake or you just didn't get something right, the attitude is what's going to save you. If you try to cover it up and have a bad attitude about it and blame everybody else, you're not going to last long in this industry, period.
That's one of the reasons why I kind of like the pipeline programs we have or that are developed. It shows, first of all, that the individual is really dedicated to the industry because, you're going to spend a lot of money to go through, the educational process to get to where you're at and then go through this pipeline program is a pretty big commitment. But I think also in the pipeline program, there's a chance of, that so-called weeding out process where, you're going to be exposed to numerous flight instructors and check rides and all these things, and these schools are all vetted by the companies. So at some point, you're going to get to a point where okay, you got you met all the check marks, and you know you can move on to the airline career. And I don't know. I think that's it. It kind of takes some of the guesswork in hiring, you know, an individual right off the street, or you know, right out of the military or something like that.
Yeah. And thank you, gentlemen, for sharing that with us. You know, I think we're all kind of on the same page here. Is that this career has a huge amount of responsibility associated with it, and with that, in the FARs, it does say that to hold a commercial or ATP, that the individual must display professionalism. It's in there because it's written in blood, and it's in there for a reason. And getting through those initial hurdles of training is important. Having the right attitude is important. And if anyone listening can get anything out of this particular conversation, it's that having the right mindset, being able to go through the initial training, the initial cycles. And I hate to use the word or the phrase pay your dues, because I really hate that phrase, but to a certain degree, I think that's what it all comes down to. You have to kind of get past that initial hurdle of it being new to you, and then once you've gone through that, then you become not only more marketable as a pilot because you've had that experience behind you, but I think it also helps you grow as an individual and as an aviator.
Yeah, I agree.